First year, we raised 20 million. We're on a run rate to do about 60 million a year. During the pandemic, I was trying to start a mastermind. All those people I reached out to on Instagram, those are some of the relationships I still have today that have yielded millions of dollars. The greatest reward I've ever had is being able to contribute and be there for someone I love financially when they couldn't be there for themselves.
This is the Content Capitalists Podcast. We talk to business owners who've used video to grow their businesses to $1 million a year or more. How they did it, what worked, what didn't. Welcome to the Content Capitalists with your host, Ken Okazaki.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast, where we have conversations with people doing at least $1 million a year and also crushing it when it comes to content creation. Today we've got a guest, and what's interesting is most people who I have on the show are people who I've met in person, either at events. I'm in a lot of masterminds. I'm inside of a lot of communities of entrepreneurs, but every now and then someone pops up on my feed who I've never met in person, and this is one of those. And I'm going to be honest. As I ask questions in this interview and we have conversations, I'm going to be discovering it for the same time as you are, the listeners. And so these are genuine questions. I'm not just staging them because I want the audience to hear. This is actually, I'm going to be finding out all I can about how he runs his business and uses content. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Hey, happy to be here. My name is Justin Freishtat, managing partner and president of sales at Currents Capital. We're a hedge fund, 506c structure. Happy to get into all of that, how I got here, all the different businesses and things we've been through over the years to get here. So it's an exciting topic.
Perfect. So Justin, why don't you start us off by sharing like as a hedge fund business, am I saying that correctly? Hedge fund business, hedge fund manager, what's the term for the business you're in?
Yeah.
The category.
Hedge funds within the space, you would call it private placement investments, I guess.
Okay. Private placement investment. I'm learning new things. So ideally, what kind of clients do you work with and what do you help them accomplish?
So 506c is the structure of the hedge fund. So when you hear about real estate syndicates, that's another type of fund. And 506cs in specific, which most hedge funds are for accredited investors only. So step one is defining what that is. So the SEC defines an accredited investor as an individual that either makes $200,000 a year gross the previous 2 years. If you file your taxes joint, married, then it's got to be $300,000 of income in the previous 2 years. The other way to be accredited is by net worth, and it's got to be $1 million or more, excluding your primary residence. So if you can prove that you fit one of those two qualifications, then you're allowed to invest in private placement products and 506cs.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. And when you, when people invest in you, or invest in working with you, what's the primary reason for that? Are they trying to grow more wealth? Are they trying to protect their wealth? Are they thinking about intergenerational wealth? Or are they trying, because you must process a lot of people coming through and you must see some patterns. What's the biggest chunk there?
You know, it's very unique to the individual's situation. Some people, and that's why we have different funds, by the way. Some people are looking for cash flow, liquidity. Everybody wants to beat the benchmark, right? So when we're looking at what the typical stock market return is, if we can beat that, that's what people are attracted to. So some people are looking for big growth, which usually comes from private equity deals that we do. And with something like that, your capital is going to be locked up for several years. So that's usually someone who's already wealthy in terms of they don't really need the cash flow. So it really depends on the investor. And then in terms of things like multifamily real estate, some people are just in it for the tax benefits that come with being able to invest as a limited partner, which means you actually own a percentage of the business that's running the investment. So there's all different reasons why people would look at the private placement space. It's much higher risk, but it's also a much higher reward than investing in the derivatives that are available to everyone in the public markets.
Got it. Makes sense. And how long have you been doing this for?
So I've been investing in private placement myself for several years. I read hundreds and hundreds of books about investing and how people built their wealth. And the wealthiest people on the planet didn't do it in the derivatives in the stock market. They did it in the private placement space. So I always knew I wanted to play there. I started investing heavily in multifamily real estate as a limited partner. We were building, my dad and I were building an organic food service for over 10 years. And that's what I was doing, mostly investing. And that's really how I got involved in it. And I knew that once we got out of that business, I wanted to be in this space full time. And that's how I met Cody Kearns at a mastermind, and he was starting this fund. I had just gotten out of our business, which we sold to a private equity firm. So it was kind of a perfect marriage. And we launched this fund on July 1st last year is when the trading began in Fund 1. And we're on a run rate to do about $60 million a year right now. So for first year, we raised $20 million, and it's really taken off fast. So it's interesting to see what can happen and how quickly it can happen when you have the right key people in the right places and everybody's executing their role and there's no egos involved at the top.
Yeah, amazing. So as somebody who's in private equity, as someone who's doing your hedge fund, when did the light bulb go off for you thinking, hey, I should be creating content on social media about this? Tell me how that happened.
Yeah, I started back in when we were doing the food business. So it started on Facebook. It was before Instagram was really big. I started a Facebook group for all of our clients, customers, where everybody could network, share recipes, and get updates and see the specials and all that stuff. And we grew that group of clients pretty big, and it became an engine. And then from building the company's brand, I realized that all of these big companies, when you go to Instagram profiles, the individual brand of the person behind the business is always 10 times bigger than that person's business page. So I realized that I needed to build a personal brand because people want to connect with the human. They don't really care as much about the business page. So I launched that. I just started creating a ton of content about food, everything we did at Heartland Foods, and giving people just education about supply chain and food, breeding of animals, all this crazy stuff. And we started a podcast called Healthy with Heartland, and we brought on all kinds of health professionals. So that's how it got started for me. And then, so
you kind of learned about content creation as it relates to business with the previous company.
Yeah.
And you brought that experience and knowledge and deployed it with what you're doing now. Does that sound about right?
Exactly. And if you go down my Instagram page, you will see when the transition happened. It went from all this content about food to, me getting on stages talking about money. And it's a big pivot, and it wasn't my plan at all. It was just a pandemic happened, and it made our food company explode because everybody.
What pandemic? I didn't. Well, look, what's so interesting. Like what I do is I have a digital media agency. We create a ton of content for people just like you, and we've probably seen it because our stuff gets many millions of views. But the question that a lot of people that have when they come on is, should I be branding my business or my face, right? Should it be my company logo or my personal story? And my answer is 9 out of 9 times, which is 100%. I'm going to say brand yourself, because you don't know how long you're going to be in this business. Even if you do everything just right, the industry could change, a competitor come up, you might sell your business, you might get sued and have to file bankruptcy. There's so many things that could make a business disappear or fail. Whereas you're going to be stuck with your face and your name for the rest of your whole freaking life. So that's what we call portable equity. You invest in the thing you can take with you, regardless of what the heck you're doing in your life. And I bring up the story of Gary Vee a lot. He started with just being the wine guy. He was literally the wine guy. And every week he'd sit down and shoot a video of wine tasting. That's it. And then he pivoted into something else, but people keep following him no matter what he's in. He was into, the sports scene, the digital media agency scene, personal development scene, but it's Gary Vee, and he just invested in his own portable equity. So just like what you did there, you were the natural foods guy, organic foods, right? And then now a very, very different industry, yet I'm going to guess that a lot of the same people who follow you there are following you now and what you're doing and spreading the word about how you help people with your new business.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. And a lot of people who are clients in an old business that know how you operate, it's very hard to find people to trust in this world. I mean, it's just is what it is. So you already have that reputation. It's already the synergies there. And as long as they're a fit for the new product, they're all coming with you. So that's been a nice lesson to see how that has translated from one business to the next.
Now, when you started out with the previous business creating content, did you face imposter syndrome?
Huge.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I had a client, one of my best clients ever, and she was a network marketer and she was excellent at it. And this was back in 2015-ish, maybe 2016. I had done zero content on the internet. I was terrified of it. She was telling me like, you got to start doing Facebook Lives. You got to start doing this. I was like, that ain't me. I'm never doing it. She convinced me on her delivery day to go to her house and do the first Facebook Live together. And I'm telling you, the anxiety, I've never felt anything like that. You hate the way you look, you hate the way you sound. But the lesson is I did it anyways, and I kept doing it. I got comfortable, and it's been instrumental to our success, not only the food business, but what we do now.
And how long did it take before you started feeling really comfortable in front of the camera?
It's a great question. I think doing the podcast, when we started the podcast, and it forced me to, because we did it live on Facebook, sometimes on Instagram, YouTube. The live factor really amps up the anxiety. And after a few weeks of doing it, nobody's dying, everything's okay. And, you just get used to it. It's like anything in life. The first time you do something, you're not going to be great at it. It's going to be uncomfortable, but the people who succeed are the people who just do it anyways and don't quit. And it'll become an asset of yours if you'll just go through the painful beginning.
Yeah, it's true. Now, you coming from the business perspective, right, is different than some people who come at it from like, they want to be an influencer and they want to get paid to do product placement stuff. You, on the other hand, already have a profitable business and you're adding this. Did that question go on in your mind? Like, what's the ROI going to be on this? And how did you justify that? What was your thinking behind that?
Yeah. So for me, it's a follow-up system. The way I look at it is, most of our clients don't come from social media. Most of them we're going to meet in person at events. I mean, less than 3% of the population is even qualified for our product. So the social media brand is it's a follow-up system in the sense that, you can do email marketing, you can do all these other things, but when I meet someone at an event and they don't really know me yet, they don't really trust me yet, but I make sure they follow me on social media. Now they're in my stories, they get to know my personal life, they see the content, they get to know me. And then after a certain amount of time, it might be a couple weeks, couple months, then the DM comes, hey, I'm ready to do some business with you. So it's a different form of follow-up.
Got it. It's very soft too. It's not like appearing in their inbox. It's on their feed when they choose to go on social media, right? I like how you're thinking with that. And but let's go to your previous business, right? Like, how long did it take from when you did that first live video to when you could quantify, hey, this sale or this client came a result of something I did on social media with video? Do you remember that first thing, like that eureka moment where you invented fire or whatever?
Yeah. The first time you get a DM where one of your clients sent a video or a piece of your content to someone else, and they say, hey, I saw this, so-and-so sent me that, I want to have an appointment with you. I was like, whoa, you mean like all I had to do was make this and I don't have to knock on doors, I don't have to do all these other things to generate my leads? If you can engineer a situation where people are coming to you for the business, you've done. And that's been a huge shift. It's the credibility too. Like when someone meets me and they're like, I'm not sure about him, and then they go see my page, credibility goes up 10x.
For sure. And do you remember how long that took roughly from when you committed to do this to when you saw money come into the bank as a result of it?
I mean, pretty right away. I'm not necessarily, cool. I wouldn't say it does lead to money, but it made the whole system easier. In the sense of that lead generation, referrals went up. So I had to do less of the cold stuff to fill the funnel. So for me, if I could get the same result, and by the way, referred clients are much more enjoyable to spend time with. It's a lot less barriers to break through. So it made the job and the whole system more enjoyable, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So the reason I'm asking is that a lot of people, they like it's such an interesting thing that when we're going in to invest in something, then, and I'm sure with your hedge fund as well, people are like, when am I going to see a return, right? And with social media, it's so different because there's so many variables that will affect when someone's ready to buy, or when you've built enough authority, or when something gets shared. And I think of it a bit like, making popcorn, like, one's going to pop, and then like you wait a few seconds, maybe another one pops, right? But there's this threshold where they all just start flooding in if you're doing it right. And that's the moment, but you can't predict exactly when that first one's going to pop. But when it pops, then it tells you you're doing the right thing, going the right direction. It's just keep going, maybe amp up what you're doing because it's working, right? And that's always very exciting for me when I see that happen with my clients. Could you explain kind of like in a linear fashion, how do people come into your world nowadays? You've got stuff on social media. You told me you speak on stages, right? And then you've got people who are your clients who are investing their hard-earned money with you. What goes on in between that?
Yeah, it's so the linear in the startup, in-person events were by far the best because our industry is the client is so niche and specific. You have to go to where your client's going to be. So it's going to be a mastermind where the barrier to entry is $5,000 or more. Everybody there spent $5,000 to be there. They're probably qualified to make a big investment, right? So it's really,
I like those rooms too.
I mean,
for me, I like the $8,000 rooms.
Yeah,
honestly, like that's where I found my sweet spot is if they're paying $8,000 a day to be there or per event, then I find a lot of qualified leads there.
Yeah, or just in the beginning when I'm dipping my toes in events, I'm getting general admission and then nothing's happening. But if I spent $10,000 on the highest level ticket, and now I'm in those smaller networking rooms or the dinners that come with those events, I mean, millions of dollars of business have come out of spending a little bit more. And that was huge, making that transition.
So you meet someone there and you just set up like a Zoom call later on and you guys kind of suss each other out, and it's just kind of like fluid from there until business happens. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't put too much business emphasis on the first conversation. I mean, I think one of the things, the longer you can delay your ask, the more relationship you'll build. And I don't think you should rush in with your offer. If someone asks you what you do, you tell them, and if they're interested, pursue that. But I'm just interested in making the connection, capturing their data, and making sure they follow me on social media. And then it becomes a follow-up system, relationship building. How can I help you? What do you do? And I'm always looking for ways to connect people with other people to add value, to make business easier or whatever they need in their life happen. And then, sometimes those people are not a fit for me, but then they send me somebody who is. So I think just putting the relationship first at all times is been very, very productive.
100%. Now, I'm just looking over at Instagram right now. You've got 114,000 followers. Under your description, it says hedge fund, managing partner, president of sales, and you've got your link tree. Now, tell me about how you are. Is this your main channel where you're getting the most action
by far
and putting the most effort? Okay, so tell me about this. What's your strategy around picking content, like cycling through different styles of content, and optimizing Instagram? Could you walk us through some of that?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of intention, I will say, with the content. Like talking to someone who this is what you do, it probably drives you nuts looking at some of it. But it's I just went for frequency more than making it perfect. I do like getting it professionally edited and then being on other people's podcasts. I like doing the collaboration, so we're sharing each other's networks. But in the beginning,
I will post this and I will be sending you some collab stuff too. So that'll be awesome.
Yeah, it's great, right? So I just wanted to make the page look good. I hired, I knew nothing about social media. I really didn't. I hired a guy to make the page look good, to put the little highlight icons on there. And I've just been consistent with stories, not so consistent with the posting. I've kind of been in waves with that, but it's interesting because I don't generate a ton of business with people that find me online. It's usually from in person,
right?
referred through the ether.
But I'll tell you what, like, even if you don't generate it from someone who finds you online, like I come to your page and I'm going to your reels right now, and you've got, most of your posts are above 10,000 views. A lot of them are close to 10,000. But what I'm seeing when I look at this is social proof. Like, okay, there's thousands, tens of thousands, and over 100,000 followers here. And that means that this guy didn't just, he wasn't born yesterday, right? Number one. Number two, he's been around for enough time to have accumulated this, and enough other people are interested that my level of trust just goes up a couple of notches. So that's actually really important. That's what I call the double take. It's 9 out of 10 times I see someone on stage or in a webinar, and there's an offer for $10,000 or 20 or 30, whatever that is, right? The investment, right? Before I swipe my card, I will always Google their name and see, like, unless I already knew them, like, see what else are they doing? Who else is trusting them? And the more channels I see them on, like, I might not be an Instagram guy. Maybe I'm a podcast guy, or maybe I'm a YouTube guy or a Facebook guy. But the more social proof I see on the channel that I prefer of that person, the higher my level of trust and the higher the odds are that I will go through with that transaction. So that's one reason why a lot of people say, what's the ROI? I'm just like, one thing that's going to happen is your sales conversions will go higher because you're going to build trust with that double take, where they're going to be convinced, but then they're going to stop and, do the once over before they, swipe their card. So that's super valuable. And I'm not sure if you've noticed in your sales conversations, the difference, the reduction of friction because of the social proof you put out there.
Absolutely. When people come through the link tree and they schedule a Zoom meeting, if they're qualified, the closing ratio is off the charts. The trust is already there. These are 15-minute Zoom meetings where somebody, our minimum investment's $100K. So, to be closing more than half of those calls with $100K or more on a 15-minute Zoom, that's a testament to the credibility behind the brand, but also how they found it. A lot of those people are coming from another person's show that they trust that I was on, and then they find the page, get all that content, and then to your point, that's like triple social proof, and it just makes the appointment and the gaining the business so easy. I don't want to say it's like easy, but it's
easier. Like we're lubricating that process, and the way I like to look at it, and the way I kind of plan my content and my clients' work. And by the way, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you later. I could audit your stuff and help you make a couple small tweaks. But is if you make all the topics in there about the objections that you typically face on a sales call, then what happens is, if they've been binging your content, you've already overcome the biggest objections, or at least addressed them. And that way, when you're on the call, then it's smooth sailing, because they wouldn't have gotten on the call if the objections were still there, right? And they literally sell themselves. They're like, oh, I saw this video where you talked about this, but oh yeah, now I understand that. I've heard that happen so many times, and I'm like, this is crazy. I think that 90% of content needs to be objection handling. Just talk about objections. And you're selling them without selling them, if you know what I mean. You're educating them about why their objection is bullshit, and why you have a solution for the objection that actually only applies to this certain situation. So I think that's brilliant if you do it like that. I want to hear from you a bit, like for the sake of my listeners, because I do have a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast. What is your ideal client? Like, give me the qualifications, because maybe there's going to be somebody listening who say, hey, I'm qualified. I should book in with him. Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Who are you looking for?
It's going to be, you got to be an accredited investor, right? So it's going to be.
So that's 200,000 a year revenue or $1 million net worth, right?
Exactly. Yep. So you got to qualify. That's step one. You got to have access to liquid cash. It can, but we, take
100K or more, right? You said?
And it can be a lot of times what I've noticed in the capital raising process is a lot of people don't know that they have money they think that they only have the cash that they have, right? So someone will say, oh, I got 50,000 in my bank account. I'll call you when I get to 100, right? Well, they don't really think about where their assets are, right? Because billionaire math is, how do I leverage debt to make more money, right? So the next thing would be, well, how much equity do you have in your house? Debt equity. A lot of these people have $500,000-$600,000 just sitting in their house making them nothing, where you could take a HELOC and go make more money with it with an investment, and it pays for the HELOC. You arbitrage the difference, and now you're making more money. So it's helping people realize that they do have capital. You know, we can invest, take investments from entities, self-directed IRAs, trusts. So a lot of times people want to disqualify themselves, and part of my job is helping them find where they can invest from.
Yeah. And do you post content about that too?
I don't.
About hidden cash? You know, that would be so amazing. I think that you can make a series like, you know, the 10 hidden assets that you didn't know you already have or something, right?
Yeah.
10. And then just make that series. Then people are just like, and the hook could literally be, hey, if you need cash fast, do not go to the loan shark down the road. Here's how you get cash fast right now. And of course, the people who don't qualify, like if they got zero credit, they don't have a home, it's not going to apply to them, but it will apply to the kind of people who you want to work with, right?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of,
that's what you need to educate people about. I'm telling you, do that. Then you'll attract the right kind of people. More people.
Ron comes in here.
Yeah. So they got to be qualified investors, right? They got to have, even if they don't have 100K lying around, you might be able to help them find it somewhere else. What else? Is there like a certain age bracket, country, anything like that you can help people more with? Or could it be anyone, anywhere in the world?
Yeah. I mean, we take international investments as well. It's really anyone who wants to get involved. I would say you want to think about this as an investor on your risk tolerance and your diversification. These are private placement investments. This is the highest risk, highest reward space. So you don't want to be too over leveraged, right? So it's someone who can deploy that 100,000 or more. And if they do lose it, it doesn't cripple their life or their portfolio. You know, I would not, unless you want to be a really risk-oriented person. For me, because I am, when I don't have a lot of money, like I want to risk it all because I can always start over. I don't feel like protecting small amounts of money. It's a philosophy thing. So if you're someone that vibes with taking risks so that you can get to a place where you have a lot and you can make smaller risk plays with big amounts of money, you know, it's about how you think about money. If you think 100 grand's a lot of money, probably shouldn't get into this space.
Yeah. That makes sense. You know, there's nothing more powerful than telling a story or having someone else tell the story of somebody who worked with you and got amazing results, right? And I didn't actually watch these yet, but I'm looking at Instagram. I see a lot of these Zoom call, like split screen kind of things. Are these your clients that you're talking to?
So if you're going back in the content, that was during the pandemic. I started an online on Zoom mastermind like once a week, where I'd bring on different people from all different spaces, just successful people that could add value. And it was the kind of thing you could show up to the Zoom call and just watch it for free. And then we did a Q&A.
I got it.
So that's where all those clips from. But here's what's really interesting about that. When I did that during the pandemic, I was trying to start a mastermind. That's what I thought I was doing. I was going to build this mastermind. But what ended up happening is all those people I reached out to on Instagram, back to the brand, high net worth people, high value people answered me because I had the brand, and they're all coming on my show. Those are some of the relationships I still have today that have yielded millions of dollars. I wasn't even a hedge fund manager when I met all those people, right? So sometimes...
Oh, so this is really new then.
Yeah, we're 1 year in. We're 1 year in. So sometimes you don't really know what you're investing in when you're doing something. You're being productive. You think it's going to be this thing, and then it leads to something else. Yeah. So that's absolutely another lesson of just sticking with it in blind faith. You know, you're going to have it at times in building anything.
Absolutely. Justin, I appreciate what you're sharing here. And I also like the fact that you're super transparent. You don't have a fancy system. You don't have, this ridiculous posting schedule. Some people are just like, gotta go live every single day, gotta post 3 posts a day to all these channels. maybe it works for them. But I think there's the kind of people like you who are just running a business, and when it happens, it happens. You don't have a ridiculous posting schedule, but somehow it's working. And I think that people got to realize that there's as many ways to do content marketing, right, as there are businesses that exist that need it. Because there's a blend between, I think there's three main things that are moving here that the levers kind of move on. There's your personality. If you do something that goes against your personality, it can only go on so long before it falls flat, right? The second thing is your audience, like what do they actually want to know? Do they just want to have a reason to trust you more? Or do they want like technical education? Or do they want a quick fix? Like there's all different kinds of audiences, and you will automatically attract the kind of audience that suits your personality as long as you start with, creating the kind of content that suits your personality. And I think the third one that's really important is how much time do you actually want to put into it? Because some people will create a whole department in their company. For example, someone like Gary Vee, he's got 50 plus people who are dedicated just to his brand and his content. Now, I don't know how many people have a budget to hire 50 people in New York and to do this, right? I think New York, starting salary is over 100,000, right? Just to have a full-time employee. So, that's $500,000, right? Just to do that. That's crazy. So if you have that kind of budget, great. But most people might just be doing it in their spare time, right? So if you figure out what those three things are, then it might not be the thing that gets you the fastest growth, but it is something that you could do long term and will eventually bring the results you're looking for. And that's what I'm saying in you. You're a business person, and social media helps it in a way, but not in a way that interferes with what your core competency is. Am I reading that correctly?
Absolutely. It's not something I actually enjoy. It's just a necessity, right? And I knew that I would need to build a brand. So in the beginning, I went really hard at it, got it to a place where I felt it was good. And then I pulled back from it. And if I'm not feeling it, I'm not going to do it. So I'm in and out of all in phases that complement the bigger picture. So I'll go through periods where it's like, you know what, I'm just not going to do content this month. I'll still do stories, but there are periods of time you'll see in there where there'll be a lot of content and then there won't be any. And that might be because I'm doing a lot of in-person stuff and getting the footage and everything to bring back to then go on another content spree. And I find that works well for me from the budget perspective that you're talking about. Is like I can turn on that spend when we get a quarterly distribution and I want to do a big push and spend some money on marketing. And then there'll be times where I pull back from that. So it's complemented the whole ecosystem of how you make this whole thing happen.
Got it. Makes so much sense. Makes sense. Now, one thing that I want to ask is, you've got over 100,000 followers on Instagram. I know that's, across quite a span and multiple industries. But what do you think was the biggest thing that helped push that? Did you ever run any ads on Instagram, or it was 100% organic? Did you notice certain types of content got more followers? Could you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a bunch of money launching it. I boosted a bunch of stuff on the posts. I did sponsored ads. That's why, Facebook I never did that on Facebook. So I only have, I'm going to say it's probably like 7,000 over there. Instagram, I really focused on and spent money. I hired people that would put it into like engagement groups and all these other things, which, and I have a mixed feeling about those types of things because they're not really organic. If you're going to pay for giveaway campaigns, followers, things like that, and then you lose your organic metrics in the back end when you do that kind of stuff. So mine was a blend of that. And it's interesting, right? It's do you want to have a very slow grind up, 100% organic, or do you want to kind of blow the page up for credibility? You're kind of trading authenticity for credibility, and it's a very delicate balance. And I'm not sure there's a right answer there. It probably depends on what you do and what your goal is. If your goal is to monetize the brand, influencer things you were talking about, then I'd say you probably have to go full organic, But if you're just building an image and a brand so that you can nail a couple high-level clients or just get high-level people to answer your DMs, it's a different strategy. So I'm not sure one's really better than the other. It's just what's the goal of your brand?
Yeah, makes sense. I agree with you 100%. Now, believe it or not, there are people out there who have legitimate businesses doing anywhere from $500,000 to, let's say, $30 million that are not on social media. And these are guys, I've met them, MDs, lawyers, patent attorneys, specialists in all walks of life, really, really intelligent people who are not there. And I think most of them know they need to be doing it for some reason, whether they feel they're not going to camera, or they're too old, or their industry is not the right fit. I don't know what it is. Or they'll feel embarrassed because of their peers. What will they think of them, right? What advice do you have for people like that?
Yeah, I think if the reason why you're not doing it is anything to do with being in your own head, it's just like anything else. You just got to dive in and do it. Kind of like just get over yourself. People just don't care that much. We care way more than other people do. They watch it, they forget about it 5 seconds later. So I think just knowing that helps.
You can sell a t-shirt, like get on Facebook or get on Instagram. People don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hashtag people don't care.
Yeah. But to your point, especially in our space, nobody's on social media. That's why I wanted to be on social media, but for good reason. I mean, and
that's why I accepted your, when you said you wanted to be on the show, I was like, okay. And then when I saw what you do, I was like, okay, you'll be the first one in that category of the show. You're in. That was it. You're the first one.
This is one of my strategies, right? Like I love going to masterminds that are centered around a different industry. I like being the only hedge fund guy at the real estate mastermind. I like, I want to be the answer to somebody in there that's different than the crowd. But I get why people in our space don't do it, because we've got a lot of regulations. We've got SEC guidelines, private placement stuff. Like I am not allowed to advertise any of our offerings. It's not compliant. I'm not allowed to give any investment advice. I can tell you what our partnership's about. I can tell you what I do personally, but it's a very fine line. And most...
So it's like generic PR. That's all you can do.
And that's why the general public just doesn't really know about the space, because everybody who's a big player is staying away from social media. They don't want to put it on.
Has anyone that been taken down or sued for stuff they said on social media?
Yeah.
I mean, I know Elon Musk did for making some statements about, like funding secured or something, right? On Twitter.
Yeah.
On a previous thing. But people who are in your realm, like, do you know, like, they're like, oh, I tried this and I got shut down by the SEC or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It happens a lot, huh?
Yeah. And
so you must have like a big, like a list of like taboo topics, like do not talk about these things. Otherwise, lose my license. Right?
It's also who you take money from, right? So in a 506C, if I only take money from accredited investors, they read the PPM, they understand the risks, liability goes away. As long as you do everything compliant, obviously. But in a 506B or some of these other structures where you can take money from unaccredited investors, now you're opening yourself up to a lot more liability. Even though these people are going to make an adult decision, the government doesn't necessarily see it that way, because they want you to be accredited to say, okay, this person's qualified to make this decision. So it's very, very fine lines on all this stuff. And most people in the space just say, I'm just not even going to go there and I'm staying off social.
No, that totally makes sense. It's highly regulated. I think that there was also a time when a lot of people who were in the fitness or the nutrition industry on Facebook, they were doing all these, side-by-side comparison ads. And nowadays you get banned for doing that, right? Like before and after photos and stuff. And I think that the government, probably like 5 years ago, they finally caught up with, how the marketing is happening on social media. And they changed a lot of legislation, especially after what they brought Mark Zuckerberg up for that deposition, right? Like that's when I think the line was drawn. And then the government was like, okay, we're all in on regulating social media. Yeah. And that was it. That was it.
That's why you won't see sponsored ads, right? You're never going to see a sponsored ad. Hey, invest in this private equity deal. It's not compliant.
But, people like Grant Cardone, for example, he puts a lot of stuff on social media. And I see him posting, not paid ads, but I see him posting, asking people to invest with him on like real estate development deals and stuff. Like, how does that fly under the radar, or is that like a different category?
It doesn't. He's been investigated by the SEC.
He's going to get in trouble, you're saying?
A lot of people in my space think he's walking the thinnest line there is, but I'm not.
Maybe he just thinks he's got such good lawyers that he's it's going to be okay.
Well, yeah, I think I don't know the details of it, but I know there was already SEC class action suits and everything against him. So wow. Yeah, I mean, but that's his game.
That guy definitely pushes boundaries.
Oh yeah, yeah. And he's got the bankroll to do it. To your point, right? He's on a mission to. I get what he's doing. He wants to bring institutional private placement investments to the average guy, and if that means piss off the government, he doesn't care. And it's very interesting to watch, and how that whole thing plays out over the next 5, 10, 20 years will be very interesting.
He's definitely willing to go, the risk reward thing, like all the way to, volume 12, high risk, high reward.
Yep.
And we'll see how it plays out. So we got to wrap this up in just a minute. Could you share with us a couple things that you learned early on? Maybe some mistakes you made, examples of that you learned from when it comes to content creation as it pertains to your business?
Yeah, I see this constantly with people who are new, and I did this in the beginning too. Not planning at all and being lazy with your content. A lot of people are like, I made the video, and then they get lazy with the copy, or it's not thought out. And I think that if you're going to put together content that's really going to reach, all of it needs to be well thought out, from the location to the music you choose, to the quality of the video. I've been told if you chop up a bad pixelated recording, it'll suffer in the algorithm, right? All these little things, you got to really learn, what you can avoid very simply, and then getting the content right, putting a hook at the beginning, keeping people engaged, like all these different things. Just don't get lazy in the process. And that's why I don't put out a ton of content. I'd rather put out some really well thought out stuff less frequently than go with the see what hits the wall approach and just put out a bunch of crap.
Amazing. It's so true. It's so true. I'm sure you've heard of Mr. Beast, right?
Yeah.
And what I've been watching, I don't watch so many of his actual videos. My kids do, but I watch the interviews that he goes on, where people ask him about what he's doing and how he's doing it. And he said he's actually has like quite a few episodes he spent multiple 7 figures on producing, and he shot the videos, edited everything. And in the end, he says, it's not good enough. We're not going to put it out. And they're sitting on a hard drive somewhere, never released, because he said it wasn't good enough after spending multiple 7 figures, months of planning, days of shooting, and weeks of editing on. And he still manages to pump out like a video a week, at that quality. So if he, and then I think that once, the reason I found out about this is a fellow YouTuber was just like, hey, I didn't know you had all these files, like, what are you gonna do with it? He goes, nothing, like, it's not good enough. He says, can I have this one? And I want to post it on my channel. He says, sure. And to his credit, I think he got like, 10 million views or something. But for Mr. Beast now, if it's not like 60 or 70 million, that's a loser,
Yeah.
So, so to your, it really reinforces your point where you said there, it's the quality over quantity. Don't just put it out because you shot it. Like, actually, if it's not something you're proud of, then maybe work on it a little bit more until you're proud of it, right?
Yeah. Even I was talking to Devin Burr. If you ever, he's a friend of mine, but Mr. Burr, he's got a huge brand, viral on all the platforms. And he was saying, like, it's little things. He's like, I know that this side is my good side, this side's my bad side. So like when I film, I got a slight, lean this direction.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's planning how he's going to be perceived in the camera. Like, that's deep level planning, right? I don't know how much that helps go viral, but if he's putting that much attention on the angle of his face, he's putting that much attention on every part of the process.
Absolutely. And I think that there's also this other side where you got to think about is, there's quantity and there's quality. And I think that to get to high quality, a lot of times you have to do a large quantity of work. Like you're not going to get good at speaking until you've done a lot of speaking. You're not going to get good at running until you've run, several hundred miles. You're not going to get good at making video until you've made a lot of video. And sometimes you don't know if it's good until you put it out and see the audience's reaction to it. So for everything you said, I'm 100% on board with you. But I also think that if someone's just starting out, thinking about getting it perfect before posting it might also just be slowing you down from ever starting. So you got to balance the two things. I think if it's not perfect, but you haven't started yet, just start and then iterate and get better each time. And I think that that's a worthy perspective as well.
Totally agree.
I got to wrap this up in just a minute, but before I do, could you share with us how people can get in touch with you if they want to have a call with you, find out what you do, find you on social media, or maybe if you have any resources that you can give as a gift to the audience, how would they find that?
Yeah, so you can reach me in a number of different ways through my link tree on Instagram, on all the social medias. It's at Justin Freishtat. My personal website is toptierhuman.com. And then the Kearns Capital website is kearns.capital. And if you go to my website or through my Instagram link tree, there's a link on there where you can get 15-minute Zoom meeting. I'll meet with anybody one time. If you want just some free coaching, you just want to chat, you want to learn more about what we do, happy to meet with everybody and provide as much value as I can.
All right. Well, guys, you got it. It'll be, if you're listening to the podcast, go to the show notes. It's going to be there. If you're here on Facebook, if you're watching this on YouTube, go down to the descriptions. I'll put all the links down there so you could find him directly. And Justin, any last words of wisdom for our audience before we wrap this up?
Yeah, this, being in the money game, I think money's really important. But, I've learned in my personal life the past couple of years, just been through a lot that, the first 30 years of my life, things were pretty good and I didn't realize it, right? So I think, if you're someone who hasn't been through some tragedy, if you haven't been through a family member getting cancer, all these crazy things that can happen in life, just realize that you don't have much time. And this wealth piece is really important. Not so you can get a nice house or a nicer car or watch, but at some point in your life, there's going to be someone that you love that is going to need financial help. And the greatest reward I've ever had is being able to contribute and be there for someone I love financially when they couldn't be there for themselves. So I would just say, whatever you do, just commit to being the best at it, and life will become beautiful in so many other ways that you didn't expect.
100% agree. And I as you're saying that, I could kind of feel like a very touching movie with the orchestra kind of amping up with the crescendo. It was, dude, that hit me. And thank you for sharing that. Guys, that's the end of the show. And I just want to thank you for listening all the way to the end. And the fact that you're listening to the end of this after almost an hour tells me that something about what we talked about, what Justin shared, or in general about content creation that spoke to you. So I encourage you to please go ahead and share this with somebody else who's going to appreciate it, number one. Number two, give this podcast a 5-star rating, because you know that we only bring on 5-star guests. And the third thing you're going to want to do is post this on social media so that your friends, your family, your colleagues can also benefit from what we talked about. That's it for now, and I'll see you in the next episode.